Right, hi everybody. Hello everybody at the back. It's quite a long way back there. I've never started a presentation and come up to find the previous speaker has left their potatoes behind. But hey, it's different. So, a couple of things kind of before we start. You'll notice up the top here, there's a big link, Google link. Now, this is my attempt to prevent question assurance. So, if you feel you maybe don't want to ask your question in front of the whole crowd, or you're a little bit kind of anxious about that, you can go to this link and you can post me a question at that link and it will appear on here. And at the end, I can, if anyone's done that, I can read those questions out and answer them as well. So this doesn't kind of replace the guys running around with the mics at the end, but it kind of adds to it. So kind of before I start, you can't kind of actually see it, but down in the bottom here, there is a little logo that says Testing in the Pub. And this is a podcast I do with my friend Dan Ashby. And we've done this many episodes of this podcast about a lot of different testing topics. So if you're interested in listening to people talk about testing, which I hope you are, which is why you're here, then you might want to check us out. We're on iTunes and all the usual places. Also got my Twitter ID on the bottom of every slide as well. So if you've got questions after this and I haven't had a chance to answer them, that is the place to go. I'm always on Twitter. So I'm going to talk to you about three things today. I'm going to talk to you about my journey away from just being involved in testing. I'm going to talk to you about why I've seen other people make moves away from testing. And I'm going to talk about how, as I moved into managing development teams, that changed how I viewed testing and how I think that we should all view testing. So I currently work here. Has anyone heard of the wonderful company I work for? One person. So Yoox Net-a-Porter is a luxury e-commerce retailer. So we sell clothes, basically. We're a pure play e-com business, and based in London and Bologna. Now, obviously, while I've got that slide up there, it would be remiss of me not to mention we are hiring, but that's it. No more. Move on. So I have tried to stop using clip art in my presentations, because you come to conferences like this and you see everybody's used the same clip art because it's on the first page that you get when you Google it in Google Images. So I've been using, as we go through, you'll see I'm actually using my holiday photos, which I hope you will like to see. But this won't be like when your parents go on holiday and then they force you around their house and bore you for 4 hours with their holiday snaps. There's some useful stuff in here, I hope. So, start with a question for you. So, could you put your hand up if you've always worked in technology? Okay. Who's always been a tester? Who thinks they will always be a tester? Okay. So, I'm taking from this that you've got a bit of a good idea of kind of career change, and people make career changes. And people like this make career changes. So everybody know who that is? Yep, that's Arnie. So I use Arnie as an example here, because Arnie's made not one, not two, he's made 3 major career changes in his life. So this is Arnie in his 20s. He was a world championship bodybuilder. And this wasn't enough for Arnie, so Arnie thought, I'll make a change. So he did. And he became an actor. And he starred in excellent films like Terminator, and he starred in other films like Twins, and when he maybe needed to pay a tax bill or build a new swimming pool or something. But again, this was not enough for Arnie. So here he is again. So this is in the Oval Office, back when actual, proper, real, serious politics used to take place in the Oval Office, as opposed to whatever happens in there now. So this is Arnie, age 56, when he's just become governor of California. He's in there discussing things. So key point here is career changes happen. People change their careers as they go through, and thinking that we're always going to do the same thing is not really kind of reflective of reality. So that's the basis of my talk. I'm going to talk to you about career change and perception. So this is me, and this is kind of my career to date. ultimately. So I kind of followed a fairly typical path, you could say, if you look here. So I kind of started as a dev, but then decided testing was actually better for me. Moved into a tester, test lead, test manager sort of role. I mean, I'm old enough that this all started back in 1999. So kind of back in an old school era of silos and walls and teams communicating by bug report. And something Elizabeth Hendrickson's referred to as driven by the misguided belief that testers test, programmers code, and the separation of those two disciplines is important. Now, really nicely summed up by, I used to work at Nokia, and I was a quality gate manager at Nokia. So I manned this quality gate, desperately trying to stop the gate flying open and me drowning under the sea of bugs coming through. Didn't work. But Nokia was nice. Nokia liked to offer you the opportunity to move through the organization. So I became a senior quality gate manager. Maybe I got a larger gate. I don't know. But my last role purely in testing was as a coach. So as a test coach, where I used to work across a group of 250 people. Basically, my remit was to help the organization get better at testing. So I think this is where a lot of test roles are heading, and particularly test management roles are heading. They're much more around how do you coach and help an organization to get better, not how do you just manage the testers, or how do you just manage the testing process in a single team. But then I made a bit of a change. So I became a delivery manager. And a delivery manager in Yukes Net-a-Porter's world means a manager of a development team. So I managed a team of developers, of testers, and designers, working on a product called the NetSet, which is a social commerce platform. So essentially a shoppable social network. And this was a bit of a change for me. And it was quite a big change, but it's a change that I think a lot of people have made. I'm now head of technology for the Outnet at Yukes Net-a-Porter. So I run a number of different software development teams, of which there are a number of testers in those teams. And the testing that the whole team does is extremely important, but I don't just manage the testers or the testing anymore. I don't know where I'm going to end up. There's lots of question marks after this. I might try something new if it sounds fun. So, when I show that to people, the first question that sometimes comes up is, well, why did you leave? Why did you move? And some of it is around just trying something new. Doing the same thing for a long period of time can get boring. Sometimes you want a new challenge. I was a test manager. I could see those test management roles going away. I think the rise of agile and cross-functional teams means that having just one person managing the testers quite often doesn't fit. It doesn't fit anymore. Now, I became a coach because of that reason. I like coaching, but I also like managing people. I was also a little bit frustrated about the way that testing was being perceived. That common perception of being just the people who hold things back, who block, or the police, summed up by my quality gate manager role. So I made my move. And since I have done, I've kind of looked back and I've looked to my friends and a lot of other people within the industry, and my experiences are not uncommon. I've seen a lot of my friends in the last few years move out of testing roles and become scrum masters and product owners and agile coaches and move out of just the pure remit of testing. And sometimes they do that to get more technical. Sometimes they do it just for recognition purposes. Sometimes it's because we're great as testers at looking at the whole life cycle, and they want to work across that whole life cycle. Sometimes they move because they were the only tester on the team, and sometimes that's quite a lonely place to be. So people move for different reasons, but I've seen a lot of people recently begin to kind of make that move. So I've left testing, kind of, sort of. Once a tester, always a tester, let's be perfectly honest, but that mindset's still in there. But let's get back and kind of think about what actually happened. And what can I tell you that you can maybe use either if you decide to make a change yourself, or if you want to see how people are viewing testing from outside of just testing. So, some good things and some bad things. Start with the bad things. So, there were some people who said I'd sold out If you don't like how testing's perceived, Stephen, then change it. Don't run away. Now, anybody know why I've used this picture? So that's Bob Dylan selling out at the 1964 Newport Folk Festival when he went electric. Now, it didn't really do him too much harm, it could be said. What I found is I've initiated far more positive change for testing since I've stopped managing testing than I ever did when I managed just the testing. It's so much easier to influence from another angle. And that angle of when you're running an entire team, for example, it becomes so much easier. I can foster a culture of quality inside my teams rather than just shouting about the fact there should be a culture of quality in the teams. But there were some others who said, oh yeah, you've just joined that development managers club, and that development managers club is kind of cooler than the test managers club, isn't it? This is what I think about clubs. This is what Groucho Marx thinks about clubs as well. Clubs are bad. There should be no development managers club and test managers club and developers club and testers club. We are all equal. We should all be equal. Okay, so jokes aside, if you can get Groucho Marx into a testing presentation, then it's obviously a joke. What did actually happen? I got attacked by dinosaurs. No, didn't really. But it was scary. Changing roles and changing out of something you know is a scary, scary process. You get fear. And there are two ways, I find, that you can look at fear. So there's this one. I'll leave you to guess what the F stands for. It's scary moving into something new. That's natural. That's human. You experience that as a human. Now, when I moved, I preferred to look at fear like this. So find every available resource. If you try something new, whether it's moving into a new role or whether it's doing your testing in a different way, find every resource that can support that. So I read a lot. I Googled a lot. I'd have lots of conversations with devs, and they would talk to me, and then I would go away and look up what they've actually said. It helped my learning. Now, who here's heard of Jerry Weinberg? A few people? Excellent. So for those of you who haven't heard of Jerry, he's the guy that inspires people like James Back and Michael Bolton. He's the author of Perfect Software and Other Illusions, which if you haven't read, go and buy that book. It's an absolutely awesome book. He's also written a number of books about consulting. He wrote one called Secrets of Consulting, and then followed it up with another one called More Secrets of Consulting. Very original, but in it he talks about the idea of a courage stick. So the idea of something, just a stick that he has, that when he needs to get a bit of courage in a situation where he's a bit unsure, then he has this stick. Now, I don't have a stick, I have a rock. This is it. I don't have it with me. I could have a courage potato, maybe, I don't know. But this gives me the courage when I'm in situations that feel uncertain to me. And so, as an example, a lot of situations I was finding myself in my new role as a delivery manager were uncertain. This helped me. Okay, so there were some things that weren't good, and some things were scary, and you might be wondering, why should I care? Why am I still listening? Well, this talk's really about different perspectives, and it's about how testing and testers are viewed, and it's about opportunities to exploit that. So I'm going to show you some things that I've learned from looking outside of testing, and some hints that maybe could help you if you decide to either make a move outside testing, or if you stay where you are, you can see how things are being viewed. And my wife's not really that small. Next slide. And this is the first one. So this is the thing that I've really noticed. Testing is changing. Testing isn't about you and me anymore. It's not about our testing bubble. When I was a test manager, I used to be fixated with the perfect developer to tester ratio in teams, which at the time was 3-to-1, apparently. That means nothing. It's about the whole team. It's about how you as a tester coach your whole team to understand what good quality means. It's about helping your team to own quality. It's not about owning quality yourself. And just doing the testing there isn't enough. And I think we all need to adapt to this. I think this is not something which comes for free in organizations. How are you going to make this happen? because testing has to remain relevant. Testing has to remain relevant because we have people like this who say things like this. So, you know who that is? That's Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook. So done is better than perfect because something is better than nothing. Just get it out there. Now, when I became a delivery manager, I started to get quite irritated with my former self because I was the person who wanted all the testing done, all the bugs fixed, all the time in the world. And I had that viewpoint that that's what I needed. That's not realistic. That's not realistic at all. Now, I know what you're going to say. Facebook's quality is awful, and it's appropriate for what they do. So how about another way of looking at things? So this is Jerry Weinberg. So this is how Jerry looks at testing. Mitigating risk against the risk of gathering too much information. So understand there's a sweet spot. There's the right amount of testing. Now, who here has played Pokemon Go? A few people. What did you think about the quality of Pokemon Go, particularly when it launched? Pretty crappy. How much has Pokemon Go made in revenue so far? It's made over $1 billion in revenue. So there's a sweet spot, basically. And sometimes that sweet spot is a little bit crappy, but if they hadn't hit that sweet spot, maybe they would have made less. So testing's changing, and I think we all need to adapt. We need to adapt our approaches. And that can mean always being a tester. Sometimes it could mean moving into something else and building on your testing knowledge. So if you choose to make a move, what's important? So, my experience. Think about what you know. So think about where you are and what skills you have. Testing gives you some brilliant skills that are great in testing and they're great outside of testing too. So the skills in terms of understanding the whole product, the skills that, for example, I had picked up by running testing teams were equally applicable outside. I didn't have that development knowledge quite so much, so I needed to learn that. But I needed time to learn that, so I built on that skill set. So establish your base, understand what your base skills are, and then bridge out from there. It buys you the time. And stick to your principles. So if you move into something new, or if you move into a new team, don't forget and be very, very clear about what your principles are. It's kind of building on what Fiona said this morning. Be very clear on what's right for you. Don't sacrifice them just to get accepted in a team. So use an example. So we were a day before launching a major update to the NetSet, so the social commerce platform, and there was a bug found. So tester wanders up to me and says, "Hey Steve, I think we might have a problem." And I went, "Okay." In my head I went, And turned out a little bit of a problem with making some purchases. Now this is a social commerce application, so buying stuff is kind of important. But big pressure to get it into the App Store, big pressure to get the update out there and from the business. But the tester bit of my head is going, something doesn't smell right here. Is there a problem here, as Michael Bolton would say? So I kept the team focused on analysing the problem for longer than people wanted to, longer than the devs in the team wanted. Turned out the problem was actually much more serious than we had initially thought, and it affected most of North America. And we sell quite a lot of clothes in North America. So stick to your principles. And when you move into something new, think about trust. Trust is what glues teams together. So as a tester, trust is what you have and your developers have together. You trust them that they will send you code that has been tested in some way. They trust you to do awesome testing on that code. Now, I needed to get the trust of the team. When I moved away from a testing position, I needed to get the trust of a team. One way you don't do that is by sacrificing the trust of others. So I needed to get trust of devs. I could have sacrificed the trust of the testers. Just let the devs push a bit more untested work forwards because it's making them happy and I want to be seen to be making them happy. It's a big mistake. You get trust by being consistent, by doing what you say, by honouring your promises and being honest. And sometimes when you screw up, like we all do, admitting that you've screwed up, that's how you get trust. Trust glues teams together. And gaining people's trust often means learning to talk to them in a language that they understand, which means as a tester in a team, you want to think about what language are you using to talk to the devs in your team. Is that language technical enough, for example? How well do you understand your system from a technical and architectural standpoint? Can you draw the architecture out of the system? Can you go one level below? If somebody showed you some code, would you understand what it meant? You may not be able to write it, but would you understand what it meant? So many people don't, and they forget that if you can do that and spend some of your time learning that, you can get much more trust of people much more quickly in your team. I didn't know so much of this stuff when I started managing devs, and I wish I had. But equally, let's be honest, developers do sometimes speak a different language, don't they? So, because they do, just for fun, because these are jokes, they're not real. I love the devs in my teams. Let's just say one of them said, it's a trivial piece of work. What did they mean? Can't copy and paste. Let's imagine they said it's a temporary solution. Ever heard that one? We know what's coming now, right? Oh yeah, it's the permanent solution. If it's in production, it's in production. That's an expansion of scope. Oops. Just file a bug. We hear this all the time, right? I've no idea what you're talking about. Go away. And then finally, I fixed the bug. I have no idea what's going on. No. In all seriousness, you will get better accepted within a team if you learn to speak roughly the same language. And that's a little bit more technical, perhaps, than you're used to. If you spend time learning how to understand a system technically, and you understand the very basics of how programs hang together, and the very basics of being able to read something like pseudocode, you will find your role is easier. You'll be able to articulate your value better. And articulating your value is so important as testers. And we can all get better at doing this. Explaining the value of what you do. Now, I still get shocked the number of testers I talk to where I work. And I say, well, what are you doing then? And they go, I'm just playing with the software. I'm just trying to break the software. That's what I do. That's my job. Just play with the software. Now, if I wander up to one of my devs and I say, how are things going? And he says, I'm just hacking this together. I think, okay, don't trust you quite so much. And it's exactly the same if you just say, I'm just having a play with something. Yeah, give me that, I'll just have a play with it, tell you whether it's okay. I'll just try and break that. Software testing is a craft. We all need to have pride in our craft. And to have pride in that craft, we need to be able to explain it well. If I get one of my testers comes up to me and they tell me a great testing story and they talk to me about the oracles and the heuristics they've used and they talk to me about risk and they talk to me about areas they have and they haven't covered because we never get enough time to do everything and why they've chosen to focus in particular places, I think, great. They know what they're talking about. They're serious. If they come up and say, yeah, I've had a play with it, it looks great. Okay. My mum plays with software every day. She's not a professional software tester, I'd just like to add. You won't get treated seriously if you can't explain testing effectively. Learn how to explain the value that you bring. It's extremely important. And talking about explaining value, Also think about the context of that value that you're explaining. Think about the words you use and who you're talking to. Because sadly, more managers in the world, in technology, came up through a development background. And we've just kind of got to accept that. I mean, I'm in a senior leadership team of which I'm the only manager in that team who came up through a testing background. So we've got to accept that this is the case, but the words that we use when we talk about testing and how we change our context, and if we talk about the details to managers and we talk about risk to CIOs and brand reputation, we change our story and we talk more technically to devs, we are more likely to be accepted. Our values and our messages will get accepted more. Context is key. Learn how to explain the value that you bring. And speaking of learning, because I've talked about learning, there's a really big temptation when you start to learn something new that you just want to learn everything. Learn all the things. I need to learn this, and I need to learn this language, and I need to learn this language, and I need to learn how this CI pipeline works, and this works. Realize when you start something new, you want to do one thing well. And I'd say, follow a couple of laws from Jerry Weinberg. So the first one is the law of raspberry jam. So if you get a piece of toast, and you want to put some jam on it, if you use raspberry jam, you can spread raspberry jam really, really thinly because it only has itty, teeny little seeds in it. You don't get a very nice slice of toast and jam. However, if you use strawberry jam has big lumps in it. You can't spread strawberry jam thinly. Think of yourself like strawberry jam. Think of yourself like those lumps. Focus on learning one thing well. Or as the lump law is actually written, it's written like this. If we want to learn anything, we mustn't try to learn everything. Pick the things that are important. Choose your lumps wisely. And think about behaviours. This is my best modelling pose. As a manager and as a team member, you should model the behaviours that you wish to receive from others, because people will react to that. So, if the whole team's testing, model good testing behaviours to them. Be open and honest. Give equal weight to people's ideas. I mean, as a manager, I had to be really careful not to make developer projects more important than testing projects, for example. And as a manager, I had to show respect for the testers, and it was important I showed respect for the testers in front of everybody. Because if I model the right behaviours, the team pick up on that, and they start to use those behaviours. So model the behaviours you want to receive, because you might get a surprise. Because I did, and I probably shouldn't have had this. It shouldn't have surprised me, but I'd been managing test teams for a long time, and it's really easy when you're in separate test teams to think that you care about quality just that little bit more than the devs do and the rest of the team do. I don't think anyone wants to do bad work. And I think bad work makes people unhappy. Doing bad work that you don't feel proud of makes people sick. Devs don't want to do bad code. Quite often, they just don't know what good looks like. And this is your job. If you have one job as a tester in the new world, it's to help your team understand what quality means. It's to help your team understand what good looks like. It's about coaching quality in your team. Help them identify what adds value and what does not. So what other things can you do just to help your team own quality? Well, something you can do is actually stop doing some things. So this is something that I found very powerful within the team, the dev team I started running, was to take the responsibility for automation away from only the testers. So instead of having one or two people writing automated test frameworks and automated test scripts and constantly playing catch up to the developers and the development machinery and causing our flow of deliveries to go really spiky and everything to get lost in the ready for test column and on our board, We had our testers become responsible for the frameworks, and our developers responsible, as part of their definition of done, for coding the automated tests in those frameworks. Then things became smoother. So we weren't taking things away completely, but we had to let a little bit go. The team start to own automation. That's much more sustainable. And the team start to own quality. Because you don't want to kind of become like this. Otherwise, what tends to happen is you get a disconnect and you end up with a huge automated test suite and it's half full of completely useless tests and there's no value. But you get really attached to those automated tests, so you keep updating them and maintaining them and wasting time, and it's not adding any value in production. What we also did, that's important, is let's not just think about adding value and adding the message and spreading the message of quality through a team just by testing. So here's an example of a retrospective we ran at Christmas. So it was based around the Muppets Christmas Carol, if you wonder why there's Muppets and Michael Caine in the side of that. This is a really good activity and a really good example of how you can spread the message of quality through a team using fun. Everyone likes fun. Spread the word of quality using fun. This is your job too. Even if you've got Scrum Masters and you've got managers, this should not be their job. This should be your job too. A retrospective is something that improves the quality of a team. Now, you're at a testing conference, so I'm going to make the assumption that you care about communities, because we are one big happy testing community here, which is a very, very good thing. Now, it's not just about, testing communities aren't just about turning up and bitching about developers and making silly jokes like I did earlier about developers. Tester ones make us better, developer ones make developers better, but developers communities can make us as testers better, and testing communities can make devs better. Try and persuade some of the devs in your team to come along to some testing meetups. Go along to some dev meetups with as a tester, for example. I'd say get out there, because since I started managing development teams, I've started to go to more development and agile meetups, especially in conferences. We need more testers in that space explaining what good testing is, because I hear some horrible things at some of these conferences. Please, please, if you do one thing, come back next year to Nordic Testing Days, because it's awesome. That's why I've been here 4 years in a row. But please don't only come to Nordic Testing Days. Go to an agile conference or go to a dev conference and tell them about testing and network with people and spread the message of what good testing is. You'll be doing our industry a huge, huge favor. So, talk to you about a bunch of stuff today that can kind of add value. Just to kind of sum it all up. So testing's changing. It's much more about how teams can own quality. Learn when you've done enough. Help your team own quality. Perhaps let go of some areas of responsibility if you can. If you're moving to anywhere else, whether it's a new team or a new role, think about how you can build out from a bridge. Your principles are important. Don't sacrifice them to get accepted. Trust is extremely important. And you can gain trust by learning how to speak the same language as those in your team. That probably means learning how to talk more technically. Learn how to explain your value. Learn how to talk about testing. Have an elevator pitch if you must. But learn how to explain the value that you bring. And when you're learning, respect the lump law. So do one thing well. Learn one thing properly. Don't try and learn everything at the same time. Don't forget that when those behaviors that you model, they're the ones you can expect to get reflected back at you. Your team cares about quality. They may not know exactly what that means, and that's your job as a good tester to coach them and help them. They don't want to do bad work. They care about good quality if you explain it to them. And one way you can do that is by making things fun and getting involved. And let's not forget, there's more than just a testing community. I love the testing community. I love other communities too. I would love you guys to be a part of more than just a testing community if you're not already. So I'll leave you with one thing that I've kind of learnt about testing from leaving testing. This is real. I actually took that picture on a ferry. Can you spot what's wrong with it? Unless you've got a time machine. So whether you're in testing or whether you're out of testing, as long as you keep quality at the heart of what you do, and you model those behaviours that help your team own quality, then you can really foster a quality mindset in a team. And when you do that, your team has a quality mindset. And when everyone in your team has a quality mindset, magic happens, and everybody becomes responsible, and your life becomes easier, and your product becomes better, and your business stakeholders become happier. So whatever the road has ahead of you, I wish you luck. If you want to ask me anything after today, you can contact me through all of these different ways. So please contact me if you want any advice. Thank you.
Thank you. But
and no one has asked any questions at all. Oh, is it closed? Oh, crap. Sorry. I don't know why that doesn't work, because it's turned on. Okay, never use something from Google. There you go. Okay. We'll have to go old school.
So, but at the moment we have some 20 minutes to ask questions, so you should not send an email right away, but...
ask me questions now, please.
Yes, please, just raise your hand and... Oh.
Or I'll spend 20 minutes juggling potatoes, so...
Yeah, hi. It was a nice presentation.
Thank you.
And then looking at your career, when you said technology, when you started with how many of you guys working in technology, and I see that you have been working in Nokia, Ericsson, Motorola.
Yep.
And then, because I work from the same, Nokia, Ericsson, Sony, Motorola. But then how come you jump into the e-commerce? And the shift from testing to the test coach to the technology. And then what are the tips you will give? Like, for example, for me, I've been working from 17 years into telecom. I'm stuck to these big companies. Mm-hmm. If I want to make a domain change, how do I make a change into a different domain?
Yeah, it comes to that building a bridge and identifying what your base is and then what your base skill set is. So I wanted to change from working in telecom to working in more e-commerce. Yeah. Now, I didn't have e-commerce experience, but what I did have is I had very good testing experience. So I had a lot of testing experience to back me up. So I took a test position in a company where what they needed in that role at the time was somebody with a lot of test experience, and they were willing to sacrifice a bit of domain experience. So maybe I got lucky, maybe I just found the right position, I don't know. But then kind of working through after that, it was very much around, well, what do I want to do and what opportunities are available? So these opportunities became available, but I had to prepare myself. So take, for example, to make a move from testing to management to development management, that was something I had to do quite a lot of kind of self-skilling to do and be really, really crystal clear on what am I trying to learn and how am I trying to learn it. So not trying to learn everything, but just really kind of almost having my own kind of personal set of goals and personal syllabus and doing quite a lot of self-study to prove that when that sort of position came up, I would be able to successfully apply for it.
Anybody else?
I will stand here and juggle the potatoes otherwise, seriously. Don't know which way to look. There?
Hi, I'm Ola.
Hi.
Thanks for the presentation. It was a great one. Congrats. You mentioned that test manager role does not fit anymore. So do you think that eventually all test managers have to switch to something else? Or is there still hope for that role to survive?
Based upon my experience, are you a test manager? Okay. Right. Based upon my experience of going from a kind of more traditional organization, which Nokia was very traditional in terms of the way, it was very discipline focused, so you'd have a big testing group and a development group and a UX group. Moving to UX Net-a-Porter, where we only have small cross-functional, agile, product-owning teams, in that context, test management is dead. because you don't need, test managers do not fit. I did a test management role that they tried in there originally when they tried to keep the test manager and the development manager position, but have the cross-functional autonomous teams, and it didn't work. It was no fun to be a test manager in that situation. I was a test manager across 8 teams or something, and I was adding very little value. So in that context, yes, I don't think there will be test managers in the future. However, if you're working for a consultancy company, or you're working for an outsourcing testing company, or you're managing testing projects, then there is still a need, I think, for that. But that kind of traditional test manager that manages and coaches the testers in every different company, I think, is beginning to go away.
Hiya. Thanks for your talk. It's been excellent. So I had an anecdote to tell you, and then a question, or for a bit of advice. I really agree with the point that testers need to be a bit more technical. In my experience, we had this developer at one of my client sites, and he was a developer's developer. He was a developer who had a wooden middle finger on his table, and that was his thing. And he wouldn't even look at me when I first went there because he's had such bad experiences with testers who just didn't really get it, or just enforced the process, or raised bugs that weren't useful. But as soon as I could show that I could talk about classes or just go through code with them, it was fine. So I completely agree with that. You build the team's trust by that way. And the question I wanted to ask was, at my company, I was asked to come in and recommend what we can do better for our testers training, and in general for our overall graduate training program. And I tried to say, well, in my opinion, it's communication, really, and trying to get people to talk to each other more and learn from each other and show each other different things. And maybe we should have a Friday afternoon, hour session. Somebody can present whatever they want. And they seemed to agree with it, but there was a block. And the blocker was, they said they hire from a very specific background, very technical, kind of implying not so communicative. And that was the reason I was given, why we can't really change, or it's not worth trying to do that. I was wondering if you had any advice in dealing with that kind of situation to try and explain to management how we can make things better. And obviously, things are changing. Communication is key now. Being able to explain what you do and absorb what other people do is key, and you can't do that if there's no communication.
Yeah, I guess it's about context, isn't it? So it's about if it's a conversation to senior management, for example, then it's about what are you framing it in terms of? Are you framing it in terms of we need to talk better because this developer and this tester don't really talk to each other, or is it exactly? So if we communicate better, then maybe come up with a few examples of where communication was a problem and what the actual impact on the bottom line, or the impact on a deadline, or the impact on something they will care about. Exactly. You've got to basically put it in the words that they understand, and something that they think is important, and kind of realize that it's probably not actually exactly what you think is important when worded the way you word it to them, but all you really need to do is get the tick, and then you can go away and do the thing you were going to do anyway.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Maybe you can ask a question.
Well, I was going to ask. I've known Steve for a while. We've done 4 now together.
We have.
And over the last few years, I've also seen that shift and change from away from test management. Now I'm currently in a team that does have quite a hierarchical structure. Mm-hmm. However, I think that's born out of the nature that the organisation is heavily regulated. And those kinds of organisations do tend to have those hierarchical structures. But it doesn't really fit well with the model of trying to deliver rapid software and delivering things quickly and getting rapid feedback to things, and also having an environment where testers can drive their own learning. I myself have not done the management flow. I've gone more down the technical specialist flow, which is another option. I'm not saying that going into management is the only thing that's available to you, or going into other ways. But I focus on security, and Stephen has flowed down another route, and that's totally fine. So I just wondered what you thought about those particular differences between those approaches, and wonder what you thought.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. There are numerous companies who work in heavily regulated environments that are able to work with small cross-functional independent product-owning teams. So I guess the problem is it tends to be, generalizing slightly, there's more of a lack of trust in those sorts of in regulated organizations, and hierarchy comes about because of a lack of trust. And so the problem to solve is not, do we need to be organized in product teams? It's how do we build better trust across the team? And I guess one way we've done that, because where there's been a bit of a kind of trust barrier in where I am, has been around security, which is, I know, something I'm very close to your heart. And so there was always the, oh yeah, we need to get InfoSec involved. Oh God, everyone hates InfoSec. They just tell us to do things differently at the end of the project, because that's when we invite them in.
Don't do that. Invite them in at the beginning.
Yeah, so what we did is we made one security champion per team. So one person who was the person who hooked to the InfoSec team, and it was their responsibility to make the team better at security as part of their role. And so we kind of broke down that trust barrier that way by using somebody in the team. And so instead of trying to say everybody needs to now take security into account, on behalf of the team, one member of the team is better at doing that than others. And so they kind of share it that way. And that really works.
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Steve. Next question.
Hello.
Hey.
So I work in a company where we do have this, like a QA department, development department, we have the analysts team, and then for our projects, we select the resources from each team. So one thing that we want to do, what we want to change in order to improve the quality of the whole product, is that when we had a meeting among all of the managers, we said we want to lose our work positions. So we want to adapt to the change. But when we want to do that, like instantly, that like tomorrow we come to work, we're not this kind of company anymore. Now we're going to be small product teams, then it will all collapse because change doesn't happen overnight. So my question to you is, in your history, in your past experience, have you seen these kind of changes, and what are the best approaches to take in order to do this kind of monumental ways of and shifts of work ethics and shifts of the organizational structure so that it wouldn't collapse and it would actually start working and producing good quality?
I mean, the way it was done, I've seen done, has been we just reorganize everything at the same time and then expect everybody to just get it. And that's very chaotic and really disruptive. Nokia used to do that a lot. And I believe that's one of the reasons why Nokia failed, because they used to do that every 18 months, roughly. And it was extremely disruptive, and it meant that basically the roadmaps all kept getting reset every 18 months. And therefore, consequently, Nokia never really delivered very much that was new. The way you do it, and the way I would do it, is you find you start with one team, and you start with one team that you know will be receptive. So you form maybe a team of the most receptive people and the champions for it. You trial it, you see whether it works, you use that as a good example of where it could work, and then you make sure that the people within that team are responsible for going out and kind of on the ground selling it to everybody else. So the senior management needs to essentially bless any change and make any change happen, but you've got a group of people who clearly know it can work and can go out and sell it to their peers that it works. So it's not just the teams are suddenly disrupted because the managers told them to be disruptive or disrupted. They can say, oh yeah, my friend who's over there in that team says that team's awesome, and so I want my team to work like this. So you've got to do it kind of piece by piece, maybe.
Thank you. I think this is exactly what we're attempting to do, and I hope we will succeed.
Any more questions? This young lady here. There you go.
Maybe In continuation to the previous question, but what do you do to all those managers actually? And normally people like become managers this old school way just because they love to know that they manage lots of people, and this is probably the only thing they really enjoy. And what do they do next? And how actually can you kind of get rid of them?
Yeah. So what happened? What happened when there? So I've been part of quite a lot of big reorganisations, but the most recent one. So the most recent reorganisation that led to us having lots of independent product teams and delivery managers. So quite a lot of the development managers and the test managers found new roles as delivery managers, and the ones who really wanted to work in a very hierarchical way left. So they either left because they weren't considered suitable through interview for one of the delivery manager positions, or they left because they could see that they wouldn't be able to operate in a way that they really wanted to operate. So that's one positive of kind of reorganising an entire organisation at the same time, is you basically just get to make all the managers kind of temporarily redundant and make them reapply for the different positions, which, speaking as a manager, is a horrible thing. But equally, it does mean that you're going to end up with the people, hopefully, who are more motivated to do those positions successfully and understand what they're about, and the people you don't really want will leave. Or you can kind of make them leave.
Brilliant question. Thank you. Any more? Or is that it?
Actually, I would like to ask one. Now you have been some time manager of developers. So what could be those 3 development skills you suggest for each and every tester to have?
Development skills. So, well, it's kind of like the ones I kind of touched on. So it's learn the architecture of the system you're testing, and learn the words that help you explain that in a way that, as if a developer would explain it. Learn how to read code. Not necessarily write it, but if somebody gives you a piece of code, understand what it's doing. Understand things like basic object-oriented principles, for example. It's extremely important. And understand where devs go to get information as well.
Stack Overflow.
So, yeah, exactly. Stack Overflow, or Stack Overflow that's indexed properly by Google. Yeah. But no, understand places. I learned a huge amount from Hacker News. If anyone reads the Hacker News site,
yeah.
If you want to dip in and out of development stuff, I mean, it's a little bit JavaScript heavy, but if you want to dip in and out of development stuff, Hacker News is brilliant for that.
I do the same with the OWASP stuff from my point of view. Feedback from Twitter, by the way. Chris Sims on Twitter says, for 3 years I've been working on a clean power reactor that runs off the energy that Stephen Janaway gives off. I thought you'd like to hear that.
That's wonderful, I think.
Okay, now is the last chance to raise your hand.
If you have a question afterwards, just drop me a line. I will definitely answer you. Twitter's probably the best, or you can get my email address off the website.
Or accost him in the bar.
I'm going home in a minute.
Oh, really?
Sorry.
Okay. Bye, Steve.
But okay, if there is no questions anymore, then thank you.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.